Section 1.7. From Theoretical to Practical. Choose your own adventure. Sitting on top are cryptanalysts who propose and solve hard mathematical problems. And at the bottom are software engineers who want to encrypt some data. Tai Duong. So you want to roll your own crypto from 2020. In all the years I've spent studying and working with cryptography, I've never noticed a single pattern in which a cryptographic primitive ends up being used in real-world applications. Things are pretty chaotic. Before a theoretical primitive gets to be adopted, there's a long list of people who get to handle the primitive and shape it into something consumable and sometimes safer for the public at large. How can I even explain that to you? Have you ever heard of Choose Your Own Adventure? It's an old book series where you got to pick how you want to step through the story. The principle was simple. You read the first section of the book. At the end of the section, the book lets you decide on a path forward by giving you different options. Each option was associated with a different section number that you could skip directly to if you chose. So I did the same here. Start by reading the next paragraph and follow the direction it gives you. Where it all begins. Who are you? Are you Alice, a cryptographer? Are you David, working in the private industry and in need of a solution to your problems? Or are you Eve, working in a government branch and preoccupied by cryptography? You're Alice, go to step 1. You're David, go to step 2. You're Eve, go to step 3. Step 1. Researchers gotta research. You're a researcher working in a university or in the research team of a private company or nonprofit, or in a government research organization like NIST or NSA. As such, your funding can come from different places and might incentivize you to research different things. You invent a new primitive, go to step 4. You invent a new construction, go to step 5. You start an open competition, go to step 6. Step 2. The industry has a need. As part of your job, something comes up and you are in need of a new standard. For example, the Wi-Fi Alliance is a nonprofit funded by interested companies to produce a set of standards around the Wi-Fi protocol. Another example are banks that got together to produce the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, or PCI DSS, which enforces algorithms and protocols to use if you deal with credit card numbers. You decide to fund some much-needed research, go to step 1. You decide to standardize a new primitive or protocol, go to step 5. You start an open competition, go to step 6. Step 3. A government has a need. You're working for your country's government and you need to push out some new crypto. For example, the NIST is tasked with publishing the Federal Information Processing Standards, or FIPS, which mandates what cryptographic algorithms can be used by companies that deal with the U.S. government. While many of these standards were success stories and people tend to have a lot of trust in standards being pushed by government agencies, there is, unfortunately, a lot to say about failures. In 2013, following revelations from Edward Snowden, it was discovered that NSA had purposefully and successfully pushed for the inclusion of backdoor algorithms and standards. See Dual EC, a standardized backdoor by Bernstein et al., which included a hidden switch that allowed the NSA, and only the NSA, to predict your secrets. These backdoors can be thought of as magic passwords that allow the government, and only it, supposedly, to subvert your encryption. Following this, the cryptographic community lost a lot of confidence in standards and suggestions coming from governmental bodies. Recently, in 2019, it was found that the Russian standard GOST had been a victim of the same treatment. Cryptographers have long suspected that the agency planted vulnerabilities in a standard adopted in 2006 by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and later by the International Organization for Standardization, which has 163 countries as members. Classified NSA memos appear to confirm that fatal weakness, discovered by two Microsoft cryptographers in 2007, was engineered by the agency. The NSA wrote the standard and aggressively pushed it on the international group, privately calling the effort a challenge in finesse. From New York Times, NSA able to foil basic safeguards of privacy on the web from 2013. You fund some research. Go to step 1. You organize an open competition. Go to step 6. You push for the standardization of a primitive or protocol that you're using. Go to step 7. Step 4. A new concept is proposed. As a researcher, you manage to do the impossible. You invent a new concept. Sure, somebody already thought about encryption, but there are still new primitives being proposed every year in cryptography. Some of them will prove to be impossible to realize, and some will end up being solvable. Maybe you have an actual construction as part of your proposal, or maybe you'll have to wait to see if someone can come up with something that works. Your primitive gets implemented. Go to step 5. Your primitive ends up being impossible to implement. Go back to the beginning. Step 5. A new construction or protocol is proposed. A cryptographer or team of cryptographers proposes a new algorithm that instantiates a concept. For example, AES is an instantiation of an encryption scheme. AES was initially proposed by Vincent Reimann and Joan Damon, who named their construction as a contraction of their names, Reindel. What's next? Someone builds on your construction. Go to step 5. You partake in an open competition and win. Go to step 6. There's a lot of hype for your work. You're getting a standard. Go to step 7. You decide to patent your construction. Go to step 8. You or someone else decides that it'll be fun to implement your construction. Go to step 9. Step 6. An algorithm wins a competition. The process cryptographers love the most is an open competition. For example, AES was a competition that invited researchers from all over the world to compete. After dozens of submissions and rounds of analysis and help from cryptanalysts, which can take years, the list was reduced to a few candidates, in the case of AES, a single one, which then moved to become standardized. You got lucky. After many years of competition, your construction won. Go to step 7. Unfortunately, you lost. Go back to the start.